Hi everyone and welcome back. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and here we are covering microservices and the deployment part. And now we are talking about deploying microservices as a Lambda. So we have already discussed AWS CDK. I have shown you different examples like how a simple Lambda can be deployed to AWS with the Dynamodb and all, right? Now we will see how we can deploy a Nest.js as a service to the as a Lambda. So till now we have seen only a simple function, like there is a simple function and you wanted to just deploy that function, then you are just specifying that path in the Lambda CDK construct and that you are deploying. But let's replace that Lambda function with the big Nest.js service or Nest.js microservice. Then how it is going to work? That is the agenda of this particular video. First, let's understand how we can do it. So we have already seen, let's say you have a Nest.js HTTP service and now you wanted to deploy that service. What you do is, let's say you are deploying it on the server. So what you do is you have a main.ts and you just do node main.ts and it starts your application. And then if you have a public IP of that server, AWS server or DigitalOcean server, you start hitting the APIs. That's it. But with the Lambda, because Lambda is a function, how it is going to be different? We have a Express app, Express TypeScript app or Nest.js app, and now we want to put that app as a Lambda. So whenever there is a request coming from the API gateway, we should be able to hit that Lambda and you should be able to get a response back from the service. Obviously, service has its internal route handler. You will be doing a proxy. So you just have a single proxy interface created on the API gateway, and all the requests will be going to the Express app, TypeScript app, or Express TypeScript or Nest.js app. So what is the difference? How we can make this possible? So I will talk about this example here. You can see there is a handler created. So this is really very important, like how we can put our Nest.js or Express app as a Lambda so that it can work as a microservice and you can actually proxy all the requests coming from API gateway to the Lambda. Obviously, you need to have an API gateway because API gateway can proxy and Lambda can be triggered through the API gateway, through the S3 event, SNS, SQS event and all. You cannot directly go and talk to Lambda. You need to have an API gateway interface there. So this code is really important, and this is what we are going to achieve with AWS Serverless Express. This is actually a module which is in place already, and what it does is it helps us to put an Express app as a Lambda. So the whole Express app which has a 10 or 20 routes, on Nest.js app which has a whole everything about, okay, it is talking to S3 and it has a lots of API, user API, account API, profile API, and talking to the Postgres, RDS, Dynamodb. You are putting that whole service as a Lambda function. So Lambda function is a simple handler that is going to bootstrap your Nest.js or Express app. And once you bootstrap, your service is up and running. And now, because the entry point of your service is API gateway. So API gateway will get the request. Now API gateway will trigger the Lambda, and Lambda is nothing but a simple function. This function I'm talking about. This is just a simple function, and then this function will bootstrap your service. It will take your request context. Okay, what is the API endpoint you are trying to hit? What is the query parameter? What is the body? And it will send it to the server. So this line here is going to bootstrap the server here, and then we will pass the request context to the HTTP server, which is a Nest.js server or Express server or Express TypeScript. So this is the magic. We are still hitting the Lambda, and yes, there will be a, because when you hit the API gateway, it will warm up the Lambda because it is bootstrapping, send the request to the server, get the response back and give it to the client, and then it will cool down because it's not a server running 24/7. Then again the request come, it will again bootstrap because it's already. And we also need to enable the caching so that if once the Lambda is bootstrapped, it's not going to bootstrap the Lambda again or make the Lambda available. It will just go get the request and send the response back. Okay, so we already understood the concept of Lambda because there is a cold Lambda and there is a hot Lambda. Cold Lambda means if your Lambda is sitting idle and when you send the first request, it needs to bootstrap, it needs to warm itself. And once you are sending 10 requests after that, okay, it's warm, it can send the response back. Okay, so we need to keep the Lambda warm so that it can send it can deal with the requests coming thousands to it. Okay, so we are going to explore this, what this magic is. This is actually the bridge between your Lambda function and your Express app or TypeScript app. So we are going to take a look onto here. So here, this is the Express. AWS Serverless Express is moving, and this is the module. And you can see what we are doing here is we are just creating a simple Express app. Okay, we got the app instance, and then here we are creating a server. Here we are creating a server, and then this is the function. This is actually the Lambda function. Okay, because Lambda is nothing but a function, handler equal to event and context. And then what it is doing, it is proxying your request to the Express server or Nest.js server. I will show you the nice and clean example, which is here. If you try to understand this code, let me zoom in, because this is the main part we are talking in this whole series. This is zoom in. Okay, this is handler, because Lambda function is Lambda is nothing but a function. So your request will come here. Okay, handler, context, and what we are doing here, if you see in the top, we are using the Serverless Express. Okay, Serverless Express is a module which we are using, and then Express instance, because Express is an app or Nest.js is an app which we are going to create. Now your request will hit this Lambda function, and what we are doing, we are bootstrapping our application and then passing this server to the context server. We are calling the server, passing the event, context, and the callback. And if you see the bootstrap, what it is doing, it is actually bootstrapping your server, and it is also caching it. So here we need to check, okay, if the server is already bootstrapped, we don't need to warm it up. So if the Lambda getting concurrent request, we don't need to bootstrap it again and again. That's a Lambda feature, that if your server is available, don't bootstrap, don't create the app instance again. We can just reuse the existing app instance. So you can see cache server is nothing but it is using Serverless Express, and here we are passing the app instance which we have created either through Express. This highlighted part can be Express app, Happy.js app, Nest.js app, or Express TypeScript, anything. We just need to replace it. Here we are creating Express instance, and this is the Nest.js app. So in the Nest.js we are passing Express adapter. We got the Nest.js app. We are passing the root module of your Express app. Let me zoom in. Here we are passing the app instance, app module, root module of the Nest.js app, passing the Express adapter. We got the Nest.js app instance. If everything is fine with your Nest.js app, every module dependencies are there, it will bootstrap it. This init will bootstrap it, and then here we are passing this app instance, this Express app instance, to the Serverless Express. That's it. So here we bootstrap the Nest.js app, everything is fine, and then this Express app, because this Serverless Express adapter uses needs an Express app instance. So that's what we are doing. So even if you go to the module documentation and try to see what it is doing, it is doing the same thing. Here we are requiring the app, Express app, creating the server, and then proxying all the requests to the server. It's the same thing like either you bootstrap and then call the function. It's like the same thing in this sample examples. So this is what we are going to do to our Nest.js app when we are deploying that as a Lambda. And then this is the code level part. Then we just need to package it, and then we need to just upload this zip file to the Lambda, because it's going to have a node module dependencies, lots of node modules. So it will be around 50 to 100 MB zip content. And in the Lambda needs to know, okay, what is your function file. Function file is nothing but, okay, whatever the file name is, .handler. Handler is the function name. So when the API gateway sends a request, this API gateway sends a request, it will trigger that function. That function is written something like this. That will bootstrap your Express app and will also cache it. So if the requests are coming again and again, it will be able to respond it directly. And then it's going to bootstrap your Express app, Nest.js app, RPG.js app, or any framework. And then Internally, the server is up and running and you are passing here the context. Then server using internal routing will identify, okay, this is the route you are triggering. I will respond with this JSON object by looking into the database and all. So this is really nothing but a simple mystery. Here we are just using a AWS Serverless Express to make our task. Okay, because Lambda is nothing but a function, and that function needs to bootstrap our Nest.js Express app, and Express app using internal routing should be able to handle the request. So doing this, we are using a single Lambda, and API gateway is proxying all the requests for this microservice to this Lambda, and this Lambda is taking care of all the API routes which are designed for this microservice. So let's take a look at this whole picture in the code. In the code, we are dividing this into the two sections. First, we have to we can just take any Nest.js CRUD app, and then we need to integrate AWS Serverless Express and need to configure our lambda.ts. So if you see this code, let me zoom in. In this code, you have a main.ts, which is your root module for your Nest.js app that we are creating every time whenever we are creating a Nest.js app. And here we need to create a lambda.ts. This lambda.ts we will feed to the lambda function. Okay, this is lambda.ts, lambda function we will use, and this is the function that it will trigger. So on top of your Nest.js service, no big bang code change. We are just creating a simple lambda file and we are going to bootstrap our Nest.js app like this. Okay, so stay tuned. In the next video, we are going to bootstrap our Nest.js app as a lambda and deploy that as a lambda function using AWS CDK.